Louis XIV was a somewhat spoiled king who was able to curtail the nobility into doing simple things for him, like wiping his butt. A king had to be on time, and he was very militant in his approach to everyday life, but that can only be understood if one knows his background. Louis XIV was born on September 5th, 1638, to Louis XIII and Anne of Austria. He and his mother had a rather uncommon relationship, being much closer than what was the social norm of the time. Young Louis XIV had his happiness stripped away from him and his mother at the young impressionable age of 9. The Fronde was a series of revolts that took place at the Palace of Paris, where Louis XIV and his mother were, for all practical purposes, imprisoned at the time. This must have been a very frightful period for Louis XIV, and is considered to have left a stain on his opinion of the nobility, forcing him into his extreme absolutist ways. His daily schedule was regulated like clockwork. His day had to be perfectly timed, and the officers serving the king would know exactly what to do and exactly when to do it. At 8:30 a.m., the first valet de chambre declares it is time, sire, at which point the levee, or ceremonial rising, begins. Few close people to the king would enter the king's bedchamber, where the great man is washed, combed, and shaven. After this time, the king eats and talks with whomever he needs to discuss affairs with. When leaving the king's apartment, a procession forms in the Hall of Mirrors, where the king leads the court through the grand apartment. This is the public's opportunity to ask him for a favor. After this, the king goes to mass for roughly 30 minutes, and the choir known as chapelle music sings newly composed music for him. Then the king holds a council, with different days of the week being reserved for different important people. He makes decisions. Then, at 1 p.m., the king dines alone in his bedchamber. At this point, the king does whatever he feels like for around 4 hours from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. He might choose to promenade in the garden with ladies. Louis then allows his son to preside over the private social gatherings known as soirées d'appartement. Then the king would go to Madame de Maintenon's quarters to study. At 10 p.m., a crowd fills the antechamber of the king's suite to witness the public supper. Then, at 11:30 p.m., the couchee, which is the basic reversal of the levee, takes place. Louis XIV loved the Palace of Versailles. Louis XIV became king at the age of 4 in 1643. Louis XIV owned 1,000 wigs and 413 beds. Louis XIV was referred to as the Sun King because of how the planets revolve around the sun. He wanted the court and the people of France to revolve around him because he was an egotistical snob.